So the attached drawing, or the drawing in front of you, is fairly well planning for startup. So it's really what it is the overall engineering, procurement, construction schedule broken down into 9 blocks. 8 blocks. As you can see, the startup and commissioning is in the yellow block. But basically where we should start planning for startup is in the initial timing. Now, why is this important? Well, I was fortunate enough in my career that the first time I was a technical engineer, I had what at the time would have been a seer into the future, a boss who basically said, make sure as you're a technical engineer, you understand how you're going to start up and how you're going to run this operation that you're about to design, which at the time I didn't really understand. In preparing for this training, the question was asked of me, do you use CII training materials? And the answer is yes, we do. It's like, have you done planning for startup? And the answer is, well, not really, because when you've been around for as many, so delicately put it, decades, 4 to be exact, I was fortunate to have a boss that understood these concepts that now have been confirmed by research that you have to start from the end to basically understand what you need to begin with. And pretty much the project that I was associated with early on was about a $15 million project. It was the first sewage treatment plant of known technology. From my standpoint, it was a great opportunity to use a lot of the skills I had grown in college. But pretty much my boss said, you need to understand your construction group, you need to understand the manufacturing people who are going to turn this over to, and what they need to operate. So he basically, early on, as to be shown in this diagram, during the conceptual and pre-project planning phase, said, get these people involved, understand what they need to deliver the project, and make sure you garner their input all the way through, because it will make startup so much easier for you. Man was a visionary at the time, and that was pretty much my first introduction to the entire concept of planning for startup. And now it's pretty much documented in research that what the gentleman was telling me at the time was correct, and it proved very successful for me in my first project. Now we'll talk a little bit further in the job of some other successes that had, or opportunities, I should say, in my career to start up projects. But let's take a look at the terminology. So turnover, jurisdictional transfer of control from one organization to another. Could that be construction to the operations, depending on the contract? It could be construction to the startup team. It could be internal owner organization to internal owner organization. It all depends in the business and the area on how your company works. Checkout, testing the system component. Pretty self-forward, sometimes for pre-commissioning or pre-ops. The commissioning, which is the integrated systems testing prior to introduction of raw materials. Sometimes called to static or dynamic water runs. Initial operations, making the first product. How can I make sure that what I promised the business I would make, I can make on my equipment? Then finally, performance testing, which is pretty much ensuring the contractual operating performance criteria are met. And those could either be from the contractor, or they could be from the contractor to the owner, or again, from the internal owner's organization. So I think we have at this point, we have a little test to run with you. And pretty much you just kind of like use your screen and take a look at it, and it's kind of like what's best describes a project success. Successful project mechanical completion, successful commercial operation, the project manager receiving a huge raise, the project manager getting fired, or none of the above. So let's take a look at how people vote on this. I see we have at least one person that agrees with me. I think we're doing well on this, and we move on. Pretty much everybody says it's a successful commercial operation. If it doesn't work, what good was it? Or you're going to be spending tons of money and effort trying to make it work successfully. I will have to say, being a project manager in a few jobs, I do like the vote on the project manager receiving a huge raise, but it's a pretty limited, area. So as you look at for planning for startup, it's pretty much covered in the implementation research 121-2, which indicates that, this is pretty much the material that we're going to review in this. This material has 26 tools that can help you successfully start up your project. It details 45 startup activities, over 8 typical phases of a project. We just went through those 8 phases. And it also includes a startup planning model. So for future reference or for more detailed on, I'd really like something to take a harder look at, this is an excellent resource for you to take a look at. And it's available to CII and non-CII members. So what are the benefits of planning? Basically, it provides common objectives in a plan for the system turnover, checkout, commissioning, and performance testing, and business unit and plants operations. People need to know what to expect in the future and about when they should talk about it. It also involves key front-end stakeholders before the design is fixed. So the project management organization, engineering, construction, startup, and operations. And lastly, it increases the focus on startup and project cost elements and meeting the project objectives. And if I read my notes, it also identifies problems and issues early during the planning phase versus during startup. Thus, the longer you have to solve a problem or plan for alternate ways to execute, the better you are. So I think if you look at this thing and you say, well, what's this mean to me? The first place you have to go to is, what are the success criteria in my project? What are the cost and schedule metrics that I'm being held accountable to deliver? What are the product quality metrics? What is the profitability if I'm a contractor or if I'm a owner? From a profitability standpoint, if I don't start this up on time, my profits will be impacted. What product quality criteria do I have to hit? And as you go through this, what are my safety performances? They should be 0 incidences, because nothing is worth getting injured for. So as you go through your planning benefits, you really have to play close mind with, you really have to pay attention to the success criteria you're trying to deliver. So if you look up startup success versus planning example, and you look at the y-axis, the success is higher the more you plan, and which is pretty much by this drawing in front of you. So, what does the research tell us? So we indicated when we started, CII has done a lot of research looking at successful and unsuccessful startups. So if you look at CII research, startup manager staffing timing. If you staff your startup manager early on so he or she can focus on the project, start the planning, start getting the resources and the input into the design earlier on, your measure of success is greatly increased versus waiting to the construction phase. The longer you wait, the longer the issue you'll have. If you look at their availability, will I staff my job early on? Shouldn't that be successful? Again, the more time the person has to focus, or the team has to focus on the startup, the better results you'll see long-term in your startup. In fact, a lot of companies these days are looking at vertical startups, or depending on the industry you're in, you have benchmarking metrics as far as how long it takes from you to finish construction completion and run at your operating conditions.